I'd like to also welcome Paula Woodley. Paula, would you be so kind as to give a very brief background on yourself to the court?
Yes, thank you, Sasha. I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 40 years, actually, and I've worked in the public, private, international, and the government for close to 40 years now. And I worked at the United Nations. I've traveled pretty well to every place in the world. I've dealt with infectious diseases, worked with the government in Honolulu, and right now I'm ready for a deployment to be working under the Department of Defense on the Comfort ship in New York. This week I'll be taking a flight there.
Thank you, Paula, and you're greatly welcomed here. You're a veteran in the healthcare industry, and I know that you're just about to head off to New York to join the U.S. Navy ships, hospital ships, Comfort and Mercy. Do you wish to say anything at this time? You heard a lot of criticism here. I'm a former Director General at the United Nations in the IGO sector. I've got some experience in the problems of globalism as it relates to the UN. You're a former UN nurse. I mean, the question to you is, have you been frustrated in the past by the systems in place?
Yes, I don't even know where to begin, but first of all, I have to say, Sasha, I've dealt with all different types of infectious diseases, and Ebola, I was on part of the research was the H1N1. I have never seen with some of the diseases that I have experienced in 40 years of my career that we have had a lockdown of the economy, which is something that really does surprise me, is that it had to come to that. Secondly, I have some concerns about the semantics and the media and the term that it's called virus even in essence, or even referring to the vaccines like I want to get into it right now with, is that we're looking at this, the media, of course, as you know, is taking a spin on this. This is something that I believe that, who is a very person that I admire, is Dr. Jane Goodall. She made a video this morning that said that we made this virus, okay? We made this virus, and as a humanitarian, I think it's saddening to see what I have experienced. And I've had a grandmother from Finland who experienced or was aware of the Spanish flu, as you know, the Great Depression. And this is something that it's almost like a repeat of history to a certain degree. What we have here is beyond chaos. We have a terminology that we're using for a virus. Yet again, it's from mammals to humans. And first of all, we're not even addressing, because as a nurse, my whole emphasis, I work with Deepak Chopra, I'm a certified instructor with him. We need to be looking at this as a whole picture. We need to be looking at how this is impacting everyone's lives. We're not even talking, like if I watch the news, I'm saying to myself, I need to be aware of what's happening. I'm exhausted watching it, but I never learn anything from it. Like I'm saying to myself, why are not we talking about nutrition, our immunity, and why are we arguing about IV vitamin C, which actually saved my mother's life, which is another chapter. But this is something now we're putting an FDA stamp on, saying that we won't let integrative medicine doctors do it, but at the same time, we're finding out the numbers are going down in China as a result of this. So why is the media taking a spin on blaming a political football here and not dealing with things that we need to be focused on? Toilet tissue is not a priority. Hand sanitizer is not a priority. We need to be talking about nutrition, how to increase our immunity. And nutrition is not alternative medicine. And how it got to that point, I went to Alverno College, which was one of the top 10 universities, a parochial school, the Nuns of St. Francis, that we talked about nutrition as part of health and healing. It wasn't an argument between conventional and integrative medicine. Nutrition is the foundation of our health, our digestion, and we need to be focusing on Dr. Sandra Rose knows, vitamin D3, silver, all of these things that we could put this now and nip it in the butt before it even has gotten to this point. Because social isolation is just a reminder of what has happened. And an article which she talked about on your other tape that you had was with snowing. Now, snowing, I just wanted to share this with you folks. Snowing, actually, I don't know if you can see this, but snowing, I'd like to define that. The Department of Justice has done an investigation on the term snowing. Snowing is when you take a group of elderly population, and what you do is you intubate them, and then you also give them opiates. And I think Mr. Steele had addressed that at one point. And what that is about is that you make them to the point that they cannot speak for themselves, and then they become incapacitated, incompetent, and then you appoint them a guardian. So now what happens in that case? What are we doing? We're dealing with ventilators and opiates and guardianship. We're stripping them of their rights, and they're isolated, and we're dealing with opiates, and we're dealing with ventilators. Now, my concern is this. The semantics that we're using here has also been deceiving the public. This is not, when I talk to the majority of the people that I know, they think a ventilator is oxygen. A ventilator is life support, okay? It's life support where it means that you will be having a tube, and I'm also an instructor with ASHI, the American Health Institute. We usually intubate when somebody does not have an open airway, okay? Somebody who basically, there's ABCs. You look at their airway, their breathing, and their circulation. It's the last resort that you really want to do. So what we generally would say is that if you were to do life support, this is something where you need to have an attorney involved, family involved, and this is end-of-life decisions, okay? So we're using the term ventilator without getting into the point that this is actually life support. And we're getting into opiates. We're also having a deficiency, or not a deficiency, but we're looking at, there's a lack of supply of opiates, fentanyl and propanol. These are the two opiates that you give when you intubate somebody. It's a very uncomfortable process. But the other consequences are most of these people that are intubated lose their vocal cord function, their swallowing function, and this gets the money machine going. The money machine will be basically this $950,000 procedure. You're going to have to be tube fed. You're going to have catheters, and it's a domino effect. So also then what we're dealing with is with guardianship, with this, basically in the past has been addressed with snowing, is that then they're isolated, and then they die. And of course, then you get involved with APS, where they separate the families. Now with APS involved with, as we know, the guardianships in this country, which is another topic altogether, this is almost history repeating itself. This is almost like a complete mass snowing. And it's to that extreme because we have ventilators, we have opiates, we have isolation, and we have death. But we're also dealing with a death that is terrifying, because folks are losing their family, they're losing their loved ones, and they're saying goodbye to them on Zoom. And I have to say at one point, I'm very emotional about this, because this is how I have lost my mother. And I don't think there's anything worse than losing your loved one and not being able to hug them or to even see them. So, but right now, there is a standard of care in this country, which I would like Dr. Rose perhaps to address. And every day, nurses are looking at, they go to work, of course, they don't have their PPE, which is their protective personal equipment. But the thing is that standard of care is changing continuously. They're arguing about hydroxychloroquine. They're arguing about basically, and that's a very reasonable drug, which we know is working. But again, that's something that's worked for parasites. Then you're dealing with Z-Pak, which is an antibiotic, which is like a broad spectrum that deals with gram-negative. So, I've talked to doctors too, and nobody's talking about what is really in this virus. Is this a disease? Is this a gram-negative, Klebsiella, E. coli? Is it HIV? I've heard all kinds of things with Ebola, but nobody seems to be getting to the root of the problem of what is in this, because then if we can isolate it, and how is this spreading? This is another real concern. Being a nurse, is this through chemtrails, which everybody wants to debunk and call it conspiracy theory? My husband was from Saudi Arabia, who passed away years ago. But I do have to say, we have people in other countries that are wondering, is this being contaminated through drones, or is this basically chemtrails? These are not conspiracy theories. These are things that need to be looked into. We also need to look at the vaccine. A vaccine is a long-term basic treatment for it. That's not something that we should even be talking about yet. It's going to take years. When you look at a vaccine, It is basically an antigen-antibody reaction that it's what it's about. You're giving somebody the antigen of something that they may or may not acquire, and then your body's going to build antibodies. Now, is our body scientifically going to develop an antibody for something that came from a mammal? Is that something that's even realistic to think? And do we even know what is in this, perhaps, strain? You know, I think that at this point, it doesn't matter where it came from or how it got started. It's a man-made virus or a disease or however you want to call it. This is important, but we can't cast blame and play politics here. We do have a commander-in-chief, and this is our leader, but all we watch on TV is the media more or less attacking our leader, and then we get viewpoints and people are arguing. As a nurse, what I would like to see is that, and this is my focus, let's talk about how we can protect ourselves right now, not hand sanitizers and toilet tissue, foods that we need to eat. Also, there's so much nutrition out there that we should be including in our diet. Stress, we need to be having meditation and people coming into the homes or something on TV, live streaming, to tell people that, like Deepak will emphasize over and over as an instructor myself, when you get stressed, what happens to your body? Cortisol is released from your adrenal glands. That does what? That suppresses your immunity, so you are going to get sick. So we have a whole spectrum here of things that I could talk about for over an hour, but it's frustrating me because I would love to see, and I don't want to see things debunked with nutrition, because nutrition is what our first line of defense is. And I know that vitamin C works in high doses, and I have a library full of books how they have debunked high doses of A, which is something our body needs. They have debunked D3, which is vitamins that we need. Cod liver oil, I take cod liver oil every day of my life. And I'm fortunate, almost 65 years old, that I, thank God, I'm healthy. But I know the difference between what's scientific and what is also things that are not. And I know that I've seen a lot in my career and throughout my life. And if I could do anything to help people, I do not think that social isolation, taking away the economy and not knowing for sure how this is spread, and having people who are actually, I've had a patient come into the office and she was bleaching everything and she thought that she needed to. She actually got more sick, Sasha, from the bleach and inhaling it where it burnt her lungs. So we need to have somebody, it's like we need to have education out there from a perspective of what we can do now, short term, talk about vaccines and the future, of course, but also we don't need to be watching every day the media attacking the commander-in-chief. We need to be having people talk about what it is that we can do and how we can come together, and whether or not this happened for a purpose. I have to say, I believe that there is a hidden agenda. I had a father who was very wise, who taught me about certain things in life, about the New World Order. And am I afraid to talk about this to some people? Well, yes, I am. But I chose in life that I have my beliefs, that I know what I believe, and I can see what's true. So I believe if we come up with the truth, we work together and we stop debunking things that are actually correct. Because right now what I see that we're doing is that we are destroying things that we could be doing that's going to help us with this disease or virus or whatever you want to call it. But again, like I said, there is a hybrid in here. I know that there's factors with Charles Lieber, which I read about. I read about the bats. I read about all of these things. But for our technology nowadays, you know, this should not be an argument about how this got started. This should be clear. This should be very transparent. And somehow with all of this conspiracy theories makes people wonder, really, what is the secret? Why do we have to be, why is this a guessing game? So again, I don't mean to get into my frustrations, but I would like also for Dr. Sandra to discuss how their standard of care is set in this country so that we can get an idea as to why there's a lot of mass confusion here.
Thank you very much indeed.